Throughout these lessons, we've talked a lot about a credit department. Sometimes that department is a department of you, a department of one. It might not even exist in the form that you would traditionally think of a credit department. However, every company has one, whether they acknowledge it or not. What you've cobbled together that's gotten you to this point is going to be that series of tribal knowledge that forms the basis of your credit department. So again, even if you're just a department of one, you're still a department. You've got to think of yourself that way. And that's the first step. You really do have credit policies, you just may not acknowledge them in the formal sense. So let's start there. Credit policies, why are they important? Why do you need them? Well, for new people coming into your business, it really helps set the table for how we go to market, how we treat our customers, how we treat debt, how we're going to evolve and grow our business as we invite more customers in. For people that are already there, it sets the expectation. Everybody gets to know the same playing field at the same time. So you're going to want to walk people through that, and you're going to want to have those basic rules of the road. And that's really what it is rules of the road. That's how you need to think of your credit policy. How are we moving our business forward with some structure around it, allowing for flexibility? So you're going to want to make sure you understand the why of what you're doing, so the how becomes a lot easier. Sets the table for how we're going to work together, internal and external customers. Puts a guideline together of what that's going to look like and what to expect. So one salesman gets trained exactly the same way another salesman gets trained. They have those same rules of the road. Allows for everybody to know what those rules are, internal and external customers again. And then it defines what's acceptable and what's not. When we talk about credit policy, it doesn't have to be complicated. The misconception is that you've got to have a giant 500-page binder that covers every little nuance that you have and every little thing that could happen. And frankly, that's not practical, nor do I advise it. What you're looking for is a guide. It's not a rule book. It's a guide of how you go to business. And remember, you need that flexibility, because depending on what's happening in the economy, what's happening with your risk-reward philosophy, who's running your company, those may alter and shift. And you've got to be able to be that flexible, focused credit person that allows that growth and to be able to guide that structure. But you've got to keep updating it. It's a living document. It's not a set it and forget it. So you don't have to have a great, big, huge binder. Best way to start, if you don't have one, is to take the tribal bits of knowledge that you have and start documenting them. And then start putting them together. Okay, this is how a credit application moves through our company. Once you process map that out, it's like, here's how the work goes. Now let's take that work and let's make it into a document, and then let's find out what's working for us and what's not. And that's how you start shaping that policy. And you take each piece of that. And it doesn't really have to be, again, a 500-page document. Something simple. Simple is better. People remember simple. And the less complicated it is, the more opportunity they're going to have to actually follow it. As I'm writing my credit policy for my company and putting these things together, one of the big challenges I think that a lot of companies come up against, and this is where I'd really like to get your take on it, is having those processes and policies in place and how well we follow them as a company and a credit team. And I'm not saying we have to make it super, super restrictive. We need to be able to have a little wiggle room, but we do have to have that basic ebb and flow to where we don't look like we treated companies totally different, so that it can maybe be used against me in court. Anything you want to kind of coach that credit manager through on what that would look like, and maybe some things to build into that policy as you're thinking through how you want to do things?
Well, I think you need to be clear internally on what the standards are. And there's no right answer. I mean, different fields are different. You know your business, you know the issues and pitfalls that you've had in the past by hiring people with credit that didn't pan out. And so you've seen those mistakes, and every time you do, you notch it up to, okay, now we're going to do this going forward. But I think it's something that evolves. I think you ought to have whatever that policy is that you decide, have it and follow it. And then that gives you the ability to respond when there is a denial, to say, look, this is our policy, we followed it. But you need to walk through how the process works. What do you expect? How long do you need them to be in business? And it really, I think, comes down to the experience of whether you're outsourcing it to someone and getting experience from them, or the pitfalls that you've seen. We need to be in business X amount of years. You need to have a certain amount of assets. I really don't get into the specifics of that business call because I'm not living it. My client is there day to day. They're seeing the people. They've had the pitfalls. They've experienced the lack of payment or the failure of the work to be performed. I'm there to guide them to say, okay, get your policy in place, and you need to follow it. As far as going into the drafting of it, you need to look at how does the process work and be clear about this is how our payment process works. What fees are you incurring if there are issues along the road, and be upfront about whatever charges are there. But what is the process? How does the payment work? Lay those out beforehand in your agreement, and the rest is really based on your experience and something that really is different for each company and different for each industry. So I think it's something that I really lean on my clients to help form, and then help guide them on the contract side about how to memorialize that and state it clearly.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that you pointed out that this should be kind of a living, breathing document. Again, we a lot of times will set it and forget it. It's like we have a policy, somebody dusted off, it's in a binder somewhere, or
Right.
it's on somebody's computer, they didn't share it with anybody else. But as you have things come up, you're able to incorporate those to maybe make it a little bit better for the next credit manager that comes along, or the next salesman that you're having to coach through some things. They know the lay of the land.
Right, and it's about consistency. So that you're right. When someone new comes in, this is our company's policy. It's not just Bob's policy, who's now gone. This is what we're sticking with the firm. This is what we've learned from, and we've modified that policy, and here it is in its present form.
Well, and it's critical for like a national account or a super regional that they may deal with one credit manager in one part of the country, and then they deal with another credit manager in another, and they're two totally different seemingly credit departments, even though they're housed under the same banner. And
Right.
and that makes it difficult, I would think, to defend that in court.
Right, that's where you start running into issues. I mean, why is one policy being put forward for one company or person and another for another? And so that gets harder to defend. So yes, that's why you want to have a uniform policy company-wide and lay that out and apply it uniformly. Everything we've talked about in the previous lessons is part of what's going to be in that credit policy. Your credit application, how you process contracts, liens, what your process looks like for those, when you engage them, when you decide you're not going to use them, when you're going to go to an attorney, when you're going to go to a collection agency. At what point is the life of this account passing through your company? How does this look? So you capture all of those things. So you already have the basis for what you're doing in those previous lessons. You just need to start documenting it.
This is just a small taste of a much larger class. You can take the full class for free at levelset.com. Join me.